Hello everyone, so from this video we are going to start the history of India or the story of India. So going by this pattern, we have found that most of the questions that comes in this are from modern India. And there were questions from ancient India and they were generally from Harappan period or from some of the portions of ancient India, not all. So only which is important that we are going to cover, and then we are going to discuss the modern history of India in some detail. So before starting the study of history, we should know something about Neolithic Revolution. So this is a term which was coined by Gordon Childe. So Gordon Childe, he says that some 12,000 years ago there was a revolution, and that was called Neolithic Revolution or Agricultural Revolution. So what happened before some 15,000 years ago? The earth had gone through an ice age, and slowly the temperature started increasing. As the temperature started increasing, the ice melted and grasslands were created with lots of grasses. And what will happen when we have lots of grasses? The population of herbivores will increase. So around 12,000 years ago, there were major changes in climate of the world with a shift to relatively warm conditions. In many areas, this led to development of grasslands. This in turn led to an increase in number of deer, antelope, goat, sheep, and cattle. So when the population of these cattle and sheep, goat increased, the early humans who were hunters and gatherers, they become pastoral. So humans started domesticating animals. Humans became herders and started living pastoral life. Slowly, humans started cultivating grasses, that is domesticating grasses also we can say. They were wheat, barley and rice. So wheat, barley and rice were first grasses which were domesticated by human beings. And if you have read Sapiens, then you will find that the author says that actually the wheat, barley and rice domesticated human beings. The other way around, okay? So that is a different way of thinking. Now what happened due to Neolithic Revolution? The human beings, they started living a settled life because there were no more hunter-gatherers. There was food surplus due to agriculture. Okay, they started living a settled life around some river bank or something where the land was fertile, and they started cultivating crops due to which they had food surplus. And when you have food surplus, you will try to store them into something. And that is why they created potteries. They will create potteries, they will create granaries, etc. And as they started doing that, the population also increased because now they were more safe. They do not have to struggle for survival in want of food. Now they have food surplus, so the population will increase. And this in turn will lead to a specialization of labor. Now what is that? Suppose 100 people were there. Out of that, 30 people will do agriculture, the 70 of them will do some other activity, and that is called a specialization of labor. Now what type of activity they did? They did either secondary or tertiary activity. Secondary activities are art and craft, and tertiary activities are trade and commerce. After the development of secondary and tertiary activity on a mass scale, you will have development of civilization. So as you saw, due to agriculture, two seasons, domestication all developed. Humans started living a sedentary life, then they had food surplus which increased the population, which led to specialization of labor. Secondary and tertiary activity increased, and eventually we have development of civilization across the world. In Indian subcontinent, we will have development of civilization which is called Indus Valley Civilization. But before that, there are some places in India or Indian subcontinent where you have evidences of first village life or evidences of prehistoric life. The first site which is important is Bhimbetka. Bhimbetka is a UNESCO site, is located in Madhya Pradesh. They have cave paintings. The second one which we will discuss, that is Burjahom. This is a Neolithic site. Bhimbetka is also a Neolithic Mesolithic site. This is a Neolithic site. That is the period when agriculture started for the first time, which we discussed, the Neolithic Revolution. But Mehergarh is also an important site which is in Pakistan although, but it is considered to be the first village of Indian subcontinent. Okay, Mehergarh. And wheat and barley were produced here. Now one peculiar site is Burza Home in Kashmir. Burza Home is famous for pit dwelling. There people used to dwell in pits. Why? Because the temperature of Kashmir is very cold, and that is why they might be living in pits to protect themselves from the cold weather. So these are some of the sites which are important. They can be asked in your examination. Now coming to Harappan civilization. But before we discuss Harappan civilization, we should be knowing what is a civilization and what is a culture. So basically civilization is nothing but a tangible aspect of human life, like language, cities, architecture, size of settlement, material, culture, etc. So language is also a part of civilization. In a civilization, you have a developed language to communicate. You will have cities, that is urban life, mostly urban life. And then what? Architecture. Permanent architecture will be there. Size of settlement will be bigger and material culture will be refined. Then what is culture? Culture is religion, art, way of life and belief system. So we can say these are intangible elements of human life. So we can also compare them like this. Culture is the mind of society and civilization is the body. One is constant, the civilization you can say is constant, but culture changes more frequently. Now this Harappan civilization was found near Indus Valley. It was a Bronze Age civilization, and bronze is made through smelting of copper and tin. And then come to discovery. So the first development in the discovery of this great civilization happened in 1920 when Dayaram Sahni started excavation of Harappa. In 1921, R.D. Banerjee started excavation of Mohenjo-daro. These are two important sites. Then in 1924, John Marshall, who was the head of ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, announced formally the discovery of Harappan civilization in 1924. Then in 1944, Mortimer Wheeler became the head of ASI, and he is quite important because he was the head of ASI during the time of partition and he did a great work in discovery of that civilization. Then what was the geographical extent of this great civilization? It was one of the most expansive ancient civilization compared to Mesopotamian or Egypt. Okay, the expanse of this civilization was greater compared to Egyptian civilization or Mesopotamian civilization. In the west, it expanded till Shukta-Gandur, in the north to Shortugoi, in the east to Alamgirpur, which is in Uttar Pradesh, and in the south to Daimabad, which is in Maharashtra. The main location or the nucleus was the region around Sindh and Punjab of Pakistan. It was bigger than Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilization. It was known as the land of Meluha. This region was known as Meluha. So this term is very important. Indus Valley civilization was called Meluha in Mesopotamia. Then Ghaggar and Hakra channel was the main river around which this civilization was based, but that channel has dried up. That was also called Saraswati River in the ancient time, and there was a committee, I think 3 years ago, Case Waldia committee, which said that Saraswati River existed, and there are some evidences regarding that. Then come to Harappan civilization features. The first feature was it was an urban civilization. Then the cities were well planned, which had two portions, you can say, one acropolis which was called citadel and one lower town. Then it followed a grid pattern, that is, planning was there in the cities. Road crossed at 90 degrees. Houses were connected to drains which had sloped gradient. Okay, and there were also manholes for cleaning the drains. Then they used burned brick. This is very important. While Mesopotamia mostly used baked brick, they used burnt brick. Now, they had some structures present at Citadel or the Acropolis, like mega structures like Great Bath, then granaries, then the drains were elaborate. Here you can see granaries and these are great baths. Then it is also important that it was a Bronze Age civilization. It was a Bronze Age civilization. Iron was not known. Now come to some of the important cities of Harappan civilization. The first one is Harappa itself. It was the first site to be discovered. It is situated on the bank of river Ravi, not on the bank of river Indus. Then the second one was Mohenjo-daro, which is situated on the bank of river Indus. It was the largest site and many things have been found here like great bath, great granaries, then Pashupati seal, priest king and dancing girl. This dancing girl was made up of bronze and she is standing in Tribhanga posture. And this priest king basically tells us about the use of cotton. As you can see, he is draped into a shawl. So today also we use unstitched clothes in India like shawl, dhoti and saris. Okay, so in a tropical country like India or elsewhere in Africa also, generally people use clothes like sari, dhoti, shawls, etc. And this seal is Pasupati seal. Here you can see a number of animals like rhinoceros is there, tiger is there, elephant is there, deer is there. So it seems he was a god of animals and he is seated in a yogic posture. So many people believe him to be a proto-Shiva. So Shiva basically is considered a non-Vedic god. He is not a Vedic god. Shiva is not a Vedic god. Most of the Vedic gods are personification of nature like Indra, Agni, Varuna, Mitra, etc. But Shiva is not considered a Vedic god. Number one. Number two, in the Indus Valley civilization itself, we have several phallus, that is Shivlingam, has been found. Now it is suggested that worship of Shiva is as old as the Indus Valley civilization. Now coming to another important site, which is Lothal. It is located in Gujarat. It had a dockyard. So they had connections to, other civilizations like Mesopotamia and Egypt through sea routes also. And there is also evidence of rice cultivation found at Lothal. Then again Dholavira. Dholavira is more important for you because Dholavira was given UNESCO World Heritage Site recently. Now a 10 symbol signboard has been found at Dholavira. And another finding is water tank. So many believe that water tank was used for ritual bathing just like great bath. And today also in our culture we find that ritual bathing has importance. Ganga Nahana is considered important, and in Sikhism also you go and take bath in that Gurudwaras. Okay. Now come to Vedic age. The Vedas are the source of information for this period. That is why it is called Vedic age. Aryans were the group of people who migrated to India from Central Asia. So it is said that a group of tribes or people migrated from Central Asia during Vedic age and settled in India. They are called Aryans. And why it is assumed that they migrated from Central Asia, that also we are going to see. They personified nature and worshipped them like Indra, Varuna, Agni. Now some of the Vedas which were written were Rig Veda, Samveda, Atharvaveda and Yajurveda. Now these gods Indra, Varuna, Agni, Mitra are Rigvedic gods and are also found in an inscription at Bogzai. Bogzai is a place in Turkey. Okay, so it is also found there. So that is why it is assumed that these people migrated from Bogzai or area near that to this area. That is, they migrated from Central Asia to India. The second thing is they were pastoral people and horse had an important place. It is said they came to India on chariot driven by horses. So horses generally not found in India, rather they are imported from Central Asia. And that is why this is the second proof they came from Central Asia. The Rig Veda, it is assumed, was written in the areas near Sapt Sindhu, that is Pakistan and Punjab. Why Sapt Sindhu? Because all the names of Sapt Sindhus, that is 7 rivers, are there in Rig Veda. Rivers which are in Pakistan and also Indus. But the name of Ganga is used just once in Rig Veda. While the other Vedas were composed in later Vedic period when the Aryans moved from Punjab area to Kuru Panchal area located in Ganga Yamuna Doab. It's the land between Ganga and Yamuna. Then Gayatri mantra has been taken from Rig Veda. Ayurveda is a part of Atharva Veda, and Satyameva Jayate is a part of Upanishad called Mundaka Upanishad. And Upanishad is basically a part of Vedic text. And as I already told you, that horse was central to this economy. See, now we are going to see history from the perspective of Europeans. So we will be discovering India or rediscovering India, and we will come to modern history, because most of the questions that will come, they will come from this particular topic. So foreigners or travelers in India during the ancient times, the region of Indus Valley was known as Meluha to the Egyptian and Mesopotamian. This is the first thing. The second contact was through Alexander or the Greeks. So Alexander came to India during the period of Dhanananda. He came till Ravi river, but his forces, they were not ready to cross that river. So he, moved from there only. But he had some interactions with Porus and Ambi. Okay, and he praised the valor of Porus. So there are many stories regarding interaction between Alexander and Porus. Although Alexander went, but he gave those areas which he won to his governor Seleucus or Seleucus Nicator. Now Chandragupta Maurya, he will succeed the throne after destroying the Nanda dynasty, and he will have a war with Seleucus Nicator, in which he will dominate, subjugate him, and in a treaty he will marry to his daughter. And one of the ambassador of Seleucus Nicator, Megasthenes, came to Patliputra and wrote a book called Indica. So here also you can see India is called Indica. Now how India got its name? The name India got was because of the river Sindhu. We used to call that Sindhu. But the people who used to live in Iran, they were unable to pronounce Sa. So they pronounced her. Okay, H. So that is why for Sindhu they started using the term Hindu, and for Sindhustan they started the term Hindustan. And the same Hindustan and Hindu, when went to Greek and Roman people, it became Indu or Indus, and from Indus we have the name Indica or India. Okay, this is also very important. Now after that we will have trade relations. So after a couple of centuries, the South Indian Kingdom will have trade relations with the Roman Empire, which is depicted in Sangam literature. Now what is Sangam literature? Sangam literature is a collection of poetry, you can say, which were written or composed during the times of Pandyas in Madurai. Okay, so Pandyas, Cholas and Cheras were the 3 great kingdoms of South India ruling in the ancient times. And Sangam literature talks about them. It also talks about various commercial activity which took place at the port city of Puhar, Arikamedu, etc. So port city of Arikamedu is, so the port city of Arikamedu was located at Puducherry. Then Puhar was called Kaveri Patnam, and Mujiris was also famous, which is in Kerala. Then there was a book which is quite famous because it has names of Indian ancient port. The book is named Periplus of Etherian Sea. It was written by an unknown sailor. It names Tamaralipti, which was in Bengal, Barigada, which was in Gujarat, and then talks about Sopara, which was in Mumbai, and so on. It also talks about Puhar, which was in Tamil Nadu, and Arikamedu, which is near to Puducherry. Okay, Periplus of Etherian Sea. There was a question related to this also. Now, first European to come to India were the Portuguese. The first European to come to India were the Portuguese. They came to India in 1498 when Vasco da Gama landed at Calicut. Okay. The last European power to come to India was France. Okay, this is also important. Last European power to leave India were Portuguese. Now Vasco da Gama came to India in 1498 through Cape of Good Hope. This is important. And when he came to India, not even Mughal had come to India. Delhi Sultanate was there, but the Mughal rulers, they were not there. Babur came to India in 1526. So if a question comes, Vasco da Gama came to India first or Babur came to India first, the answer will be Vasco da Gama. And then East India Company was founded in 1600 during the time of Akbar. But when they came to India, it was Jahangir who was ruling the country. Then now we are going to discuss upon the discovery of India or rediscovery of India. In the discovery of India, we can say the role of this individual was very important. His name is William Jones. He was a philologist and studied ancient literature and languages like Greek, Latin and Sanskrit. Okay, he founded something called Asiatic Society of Bengal. He used to say, the Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of wonderful structure, more perfect than Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either. Now, due to Asiatic Society of Bengal, a lot of people, they developed interest in Indian history and past, and they started studying that. Because if you want to rule a country, then also you need to read the history of that place. But apart from that, they also had genuine interest in the past of India. Now some of the early Sanskrit works which were translated into English by their efforts were a code of Gentoo laws. A code of Gentoo law was a translation of Manu Smriti and it was done by N.B. Halhed. The second one is Kalidasa's Shakuntalam, which was translated basically by William Jones himself. Then Bhagavad Gita was translated into English by Charles Wilkins. These names are important. Bhagavad Gita, Charles Wilkins, Kalidasa Shakuntalam, William Jones. A code of Gentoo laws is nothing but Manusmriti and was written by N.B. Halhed. Now come to this particular thing. Why at all they were interested in studying the Sanskrit text and Indian past? William Jones is known today for making observation about relationship between the Indo-European languages. In 1786 he suggested that Sanskrit, Greek and Latin languages had a common root. Jones established the Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. So this year is also important. It might be asked when he started Asiatic Society of Bengal. There might be a question, who started Asiatic Society? William Jones will be the answer, and in 1784. Now come to this. He found there are several words in Latin and Greek which are very similar to Sanskrit. For example, serpent. What you call a snake in Sanskrit, you call sarpa. The sarpa and serpent in Greek and Latin and English are same. Similarly, matri. Matri, then mater, then mother, then mother. Pitri, then pater, then father, then dwa, duo and two. So today also duo is used. Then musa, musa and mouse. You can see here also there is a lot of similarity. And then trident, something having three spikes is called trident. And three means what? Three. Trishul. Three is basically tree there. So a lot of words were similar. And then he thought that ancient languages of Europe like Latin, Greek and ancient language of India, that is Sanskrit, had a common root. Now after studying about William Jones, it is also important that you know about James Princeps. So there was a question in this, who first deciphered the edicts and inscriptions of Emperor Ashoka? So the options were George Bilher, William Jones, Max Muller, and James Prinsep? The answer to this will be James Prinsep. So James Prinsep deciphered two of the languages or two of the script. They were Brahmi script and Kharosthi script, and the Ashokan inscriptions were written in Brahmi and Kharosthi script. And when he did that, 1936-38. So he is also important. And last for today, Alexander Cunningham. He founded something called Archaeological Survey of India in 1861, and he excavated important sites like Sanchi Stupa and also Nalanda Mahavihar. Okay, and his contribution to Indian archaeology is immense, and due to his work only we can say we were able to rediscover our Indian past. So these people are important questions have been asked from these people. So this was some information which was important before studying the modern history. In the next lecture, we will start the modern history of India.